is Patrice Arend. She's an attorney partner at the Jaffe Law Firm. And Ms. Arend, thank you very much for joining us here on the MegaCast.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, good to have you there. We it's so much fun. Just before we get into the business of the show, so much fun to do these Zoom calls and see everybody at their house, and So thank you very much for inviting us into your home for a couple of minutes today. We always ask, is everyone doing okay at your place, and how is isolation going for you and your family?
Everyone is doing fine in my family. Thank you for asking. Isolation is a challenge, as it is for most people, but we're hanging in there and doing the best that we can under the circumstances. Everybody's happy and healthy, and that's all we can ask for.
So I can count my daily Zoom meetings on both hands barely. You've been doing a lot of that kind of thing to keep in touch like the rest of us have?
Yes, Zoom meetings are becoming very popular, that and Google Meets as a way of getting together and conducting business. Also, education. My kids are doing that Google meetings for teaching sessions with their teachers.
And I know it's not what we're here to talk about today, but it's been absolutely amazing what has been happening in education. On the business side, we're opening up our offices more and more, manufacturing beginning to open up. We saw a bit of an opening in the last couple of weeks, retail doing a little bit more curbside service. And, we've got a lot of different sectors of the economy that are coming back. We still want to get more out, but there are more companies, and in particular manufacturers opening their doors this week. There's a lot to consider as you open your doors. I worked on like a long list from the county's website as we got ready to let more people in our studios, and it was confusing. It took several hours to try to figure it out. What kind of advice do you have for folks that are getting ready to reopen their businesses?
Well, the first thing that you should do is make sure that you understand what your obligations are. Make sure that you've read the executive orders that have been issued by the governor. You should also understand whether there are requirements in the county in which you do business. Different counties also have emergency health orders that have been issued, and you should understand what those requirements are. And being familiar with what the recommendations of the CDC and OSHA have put out as well are important in order to move forward.
And it's important we get it right, not only so we don't run afoul of the law, but it's also important we get it right to make sure our employees are comfortable and we put them in a safe environment. And then there's the employee side of it, too. I mean, your employer may not get everything right, but I think it's important for employees to know, too, what kind of things their employer should be doing so they can help the whole process along. Would you agree?
Oh, I definitely agree. Employers need to understand what they're supposed to be providing to the employees, and likewise, employees should know what their employers should be providing to them.
Patrice Arend is on the line, attorney and partner at the Jaffe Law Firm. We appreciate you joining us. So let's say we have an employee and they're collecting their unemployment. They're getting that extra $600 from the federal government. And you know what? They're kind of enjoying life on the beach. And we, employer, say, hey, it's time to get back to work. We're opening up our offices. We can do it given our business under the current orders. And employee A isn't really crazy about coming back to work. How do you resolve that one?
Well, I think the first step, anytime you're dealing with an employee who's reticent about coming back to work, is really to understand the reason why they don't want to come back to work. And there could be a number of different reasons. One, as you point out, perhaps the employee is enjoying unemployment and doesn't want to come back to work. Or is there a fear factor that you have to deal with? The employee is fearful for coming back to work, or are there medical reasons, or are they taking care of a loved one, or are they dealing with children at home who are not able to go to daycare or to school? So the first step is to understand the reason. But if the reason is that the employee simply would rather collect an unemployment check, then that's not a sufficient reason not to return to work. I think it's important for employers to let their employees know that they have work available for them to do, that employee is welcomed back, uh, getting employees to be comfortable from a safety perspective, that the employer has done what they're required to do to make the workplace safe and to welcome them back to work. And if the employee chooses, despite that information, not to return to work, unfortunately, it could jeopardize their unemployment benefits, and their unemployment benefits would stop.
All right, so let's do a short list. We only have a limited amount of time, unfortunately. Short list of reasons why employees wouldn't have to come back to work, and I think you got to it. Daycare may be an issue. Maybe they have a health issue too. I mean, could they theoretically, an employee, go to their doctor if they feel that they are in a high risk area? Might that be a reason why they wouldn't want to go back to work, and could make those arrangements?
Yeah, if you have a health condition that doesn't allow you to come back to work, the prudent thing for the employee to do would be to go to their doctor and to get a note to let the employer know that they should not be in the workplace. If you've got daycare or childcare responsibilities, you have the Family First Coronavirus Response Act that provides certain protections as well. And so there shouldn't be a blanket rule for employers requiring employees to come back to work no matter what. It's a case-by-case decision, and employers should be very careful and understand the reason why the employee's not coming back.
Patrice Arend is with us, attorney partner, Jaffe Law Firm. We're talking about employment and labor issues as they relate to the coronavirus and your return. Are employers, is it their responsibility to interpret these orders? The governor can't write every little scenario into the orders. So, I mean, do we as employers, do we look at that and go, well, we kind of fall into this classification? We're, for example, a media outlet. So we feel that we are essential workers, and we've kind of deemed ourselves essential workers and are working under that set of conditions. Is that the responsibility of the employers to figure out how they fit in to these orders and comply with them as they see fit? Is that correct?
Yes, the employer should do a good faith effort at interpreting the executive orders. There are cases where you can attempt to discern the meaning by reading those executive orders quite carefully, and other emergency healthcare orders. But at the end of the day, the employer is obligated to interpret those the best that they can, and to provide as safe a workplace as they can.
And if they're confused, because my goodness, it's confusing. I had to go through it all myself. That's when, we might want to call you, Patrice, or whoever our attorney is, and just get some clarity. Probably not a bad idea right now.
That's always a good idea to have someone help you through this process. There's a lot of information, and it can be confusing to try to understand and put it all together.
All right. So here we've had a perfectly wonderful, enjoyable interview, and I'm about to screw the whole thing up. So let's talk about that guy up in Owasso real quick. I don't know if you want to render a legal opinion on that, but here we have a barber up in Owasso, obviously making huge headlines all around the state of Michigan. He refuses to close. The local sheriff has said, you know what, we're not going to enforce these regulations from the state because we don't want to. Court now has an injunction stopping the state from booting him. I think that the state is talking about possibly taking away their license. I assume you've been watching the news. What a crazy mess this is. Do you have any comment or thoughts on all of it?
Well, my comment is to watch how it plays out in the court system. Unfortunately, when the governor issues an executive order and then the counties have emergency health orders, there's a certain amount of teeth to them, and they can be enforced through the judicial system, through the court system. And we have to then look to the courts to enforce those orders, or the attorney general to enforce those orders through the court system. And then the courts ultimately have to make the decision to whether they're going to require that they be followed.
Well, you lawyers are having a lot of fun right now watching that case, and then just this huge monumental case that's going to probably go all the way up to the Supreme Court here in the state of Michigan to figure out whether or not the governor can continue to hand out these orders, or whether the legislature will prevail. They've taken her to court saying you can't do this anymore. So I assume you and all the other lawyers around the state of Michigan are keeping an eye on these cases, and we'll we'll, as you said, probably wait and see how the courts rule. But any thoughts on that one at all?
Well, at this point, we do have the executive orders that are in place, and the recommendation is to follow those executive orders until someone tells you that you shouldn't. So at this point, the executive orders are in place. If the court system were to determine that the governor had overstepped, that those orders are not enforceable, that they can't be followed, then we will be in a different situation, and presumably the legislature will then have to act and provide some guidance to employers in this issue.
You know, just to affirm what you just said, even the folks that sued her said follow the orders for now. I mean, even those guys said, you know, look, for right now, you got to follow the governor's orders. We'll let this play out in court, and we'll figure it all out. Counselor, I got to go. This is fun. Thank you very much. Hopefully we can have you back again. Patrice Arend, attorney, partner, Jaffe Law Firm. Anything you want to say before we say so long?
And well, stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Thanks for checking in. Thanks for all the helpful advice. It is a complicated time, my friends.